Dr. Arwin Q. Tan is Associate Professor at the Department of Musicology at the University of the Philippines College of Music in Diliman, Quezon City, where he also undertook his doctoral studies. He is the editor of Saysay Himig, a source book on Philippine music history, 1880 to 1941, UP Press, and is the current area editor for the music volume of the digital edition of the Cultural Center of the Philippines Encyclopedia of Philippine Art. His dissertation was awarded second honorary mention at the International Musicological Society Outstanding Dissertation Awards in 2020 and has received the university's International Publications Award thrice for his research. He is also active as conductor of the Novo Concertante Manila and has performed in numerous choral festivals and competitions in Asia and Europe.
Good afternoon. My paper is entitled Reading Gender in Manila Theater's Border Crossing Songs in the Early 20th Century. In the prolific theater productions of localized zarzuelas in Manila in the early 20th century, songs highlighting gender narratives of emancipation, particularly of women, became tools for female theater stars to negotiate multiple identities of the emergent modern Filipina. In the musical stages where they performed, various tropes of depicting women, generally from the point of view of male libertists and composers, were manifest in the modernizing construction of the Manila Maiden. Defying the traditional expectations of patriarchal societies to which colonial Manila was structured upon, these female stars, through their agency, exercised power in maintaining a gendered performativity of their musical art while negotiating for the production of music that was not limited to the bounds of the ideology of domesticity. In this paper, I interrogate how female stars metaphorically crossed borders and transgressed boundaries in negotiating for the Filipinas' evolving multiple identities through the songs they perform. Borrowing from Joan Scott's definition of gender as a, I quote, primary way of signifying relationships of power, end of quote, this paper aims to examine how they interacted, contradicted, and negotiated within Manila's theaters for a space that helped them put forward the ideals of emancipation, equality, and self-determination. Choosing theater as the arena to examine women's agency in the practice of alternative modernities, this study examines the border crossing songs from zarzuela productions as forms of resistance to the generally patriarchal social structure of Manila's colonial society. How did these songs performances by female stars demarcate the shifting identity of the Filipina from a gendered sacred frontier represented by the image of Maria Clara to a Filipina who exercises her own agency to shape her identity? As the islands were introduced to American modernity, a new gender construction that fostered individual agency gave rise to the fluid navigation of the boundaries of femininity from the idealized prescriptive model to the quotidian pragmatic performance model and back. Tremilios defines the idealized model as referencing, and I quote, a 19th century Spanish upper-class typus in which a passive demeanor, refined behavior, a reputation of respectability, overt religiosity, and virginity before marriage were paramount, while the feminine as performed is in many ways contradictory. Women in the Philippines have agency, do have romantic liaisons, and often engage in sensual and sexual behavior that contradict ideals of refined womanhood and virginity, end of quote. These symbolize borders, which Ewing describes as, I quote, a popular metaphor for thinking about multiple identities, particularly in studies where culture is seen as a process involving negotiating differences of all kinds, end of quote. This border crossing is manifested in the songs from zarzuela productions, which I highlight in this paper. Nabasag ang banga, or the clay pot is broken, from Dalagang Bukid, Country Maiden, and Ang Masayang Dalaga, the Happy Maiden, from Angkiri, the Flirt. Nabasag ang banga is the iconic song from the 1917 zarzuela Dalagang Bukid, penned by Hermogenes Ilagan, with music by Leon Ignacio. Dalagang Bukid holds the record for being the most performed zarzuela during the 1920s with its over 1,000 stagings and became the first film produced by Jose Nepomuceno's Malayan movies in 1919. It also helped catapult the career of Atang de la Rama, who was originally cast to play the lead role of Angelita at the age of 14 when it was staged by the Compañía de Zarzuela Ilagan at the Teatro Zorrilla in 1917. In the zarzuela, the pretty provincial maiden Angelita, who sells flowers at the cabaret, captures the attention of men in the dance hall with her charm and wit. She is lured by a rich usurer, Don Silvestre, who uses his wealth to control Angelita's parents through lending them gambling money. However, she falls in love with the young but poor student Cipriano, who is in his final stage of studies to become a lawyer. Don Silvestre's persuasion reaches a climax when he sponsored Angelita to win the La Vanguardia beauty contest, which resulted to her parents' acceptance of his intention to marry their daughter after the coronation. Upon learning about this plot, Cipriano hurriedly persuaded Angelita to forgo the coronation ceremony and instead join him to go to church to be married. At the end of the zarzuela, Angelita is seen being crowned while announcing that she is now married to Cipriano, to which Don Silvestre frustratingly conceded. The storyline reflects a common picture of many Filipino families marred by financial struggles, baseless hope for obtaining wealth, exploitation of rural resources by scrupulous urban landlords, and the sacrificial labor of offsprings to bring food to the family's table. Situated in a household where her parents have given up work and instead resorted to gambling, Angelita represents the ideal of a Filipina heroine who, together with her siblings, assume the responsibility of earning a few pesos for their family. Being caught in a difficult situation where, as a daughter whose parents have promised her to be married to a wealthy loan shark as a manner of payment for their huge unpaid financial debt, Angelita, who was a typical country maiden, expectedly adheres to the character of the idealized prescriptive model of the Filipina. However, she fluidly navigates into the pragmatic performative model when she wittingly exercises her agency by stopping the physical fight ensuing between Don Silvestre and Cipriano as they struggle to earn the right to be her consort and eventual husband. She breaks one pot to call their attention and proposed a more noble duel to test their intentions by letting them choose the pot that contains her necklace with a golden heart out of 100 pots made by her father. It is here that the song Nabasag ang Banga is sang. The song is set as a foxtrot, adhering to the modern sound of danceable American rhythm that was popular in the early 20th century. Let's listen to it. At the outset, the song's text is seemingly irrelevant to the scene, but the careful examination of the lyrics reveals Angelita's exercise of her agency at self-determination done by a freely choosing autonomous person. The chorus asks the question, ano ang nangyari? Nabasag ang banga. What happened? The clay pot broke, which triggers the foregrounding of the song's mischievous sexual innuendos, according to Doreen Fernandez. Symbolically, the pot alludes to virginity which has been lost as the strong imagery of it being broken is emphasized. The answer to the question vividly refers to the carelessness of the man that brings him and the lady in deep trouble. A further allusion to lost virginity may be hinted at the last verse. The contradiction within Angelita's identity as a virtuous and obedient daughter as against that of a witty Filipina who practices her agency is apparent as the song iterates that the jar was broken because it was snatched from her secure handling, alluding to losing her virginity not at her own volition. In addition, the imagery of mud is used to allude to the lost honor and dignity from giving up her virginity prior to marriage. In the zarzuela, I argue that this song was Angelita's subdued way of making her choice apparent. The song symbolizes emancipation from the patriarchal stereotyping of women in Philippine society and attained equality through pursuing her self-interest. Figuratively, the word emancipation pertains to liberation from intellectual, moral, or spiritual fetters, and Scott emphasizes that, and I quote, the issue is not so much action by an external agency as it is an internal matter, a change in consciousness. I quote. She adds that to be emancipated is, I quote further, to enjoy some measure of unencumbered thought or movement from a situation of constraint to one of some kind of freedom. End of quote. The song's message, indicating Angelita's exercise of her freedom to choose, is a potent symbol of traversing the boundaries of the island's gender-specific social structures. Nabasag ang Banga also subduedly hints at this possibility happening among the island's female population. Despite its strong sexual innuendos, it became the most popular song from the Lagang Bukid, and it has been closely associated to the most bankable zarzuela lead star of her time, Atang de la Rama. De la Rama's agency, through her portrayal of Angelita's character, may have caused the public to become more tolerant of an otherwise unacceptable variation of the image of the Filipina. As Miranda asserts, De la Rama's continued performance of the song was the true source for the broken jar euphemism for lost virginity among the Tagalog-speaking public who found the phrase nabasag ang banga more pleasing to the ear. She is publicly known to have married Amado Hernandez and as such maintained separate identities as a theater star and a wife. De la Rama's public image as a theater star was distinct from her private persona that never overstepped the limits of good taste. Another song which De la Rama performed is Ang Masayang Dalaga, or The Happy Maiden, from the 1926 zarzuela Ang Kiri, or The Flirt, with libretto written by Servando de los Angeles and music composed by Leon Ignacio. From the title, it is apparent that the lead star is cast in a non-traditional character that personifies the image of a female social outcast. Historically, this zarzuela is the first to present the contrabida, anti-hero, as bida, hero. It is also considered as one of pre-war's most popular zarzuelas with a recorded run of more than 351 performances. The story is about the sojourns of a fun-loving and party-giving flirt, Sesang, whose four suitors provide her a luxurious lifestyle that allows her to live with a carefree attitude. The rich old man, Ramon, pays for her house, servants, and driver. The congressman Norris and fiscal Soter provide for her other daily expenses, and the poet Pepa is the only one among the four who dreams of marrying her. To complicate the plot, Sesang is not in love with any of them because her eyes are fixed on the law student Jacinto, who is the dear one of her seamstress Pilar. Sesang lures Jacinto to stay in her house, which caused Ramon to be furious. After some time, Jacinto is persuaded to go home to the province and later on marry Pilar, to Sesang's dismay. Her efforts to win him back were futile, and she eventually accepted the painful truth that Jacinto will never be in love with her. In the end, she realizes the noble intention of Pepe and accepts his love, winning the sympathy of Pilar and Jacinto's mother, Aling Biang. The song Ang Magandang Dalaga is cast in binary form, where the A section is in the key of C minor and the B section moves to its parallel major. It is set in the danza habanera rhythm, and let us listen to a rare recording of this song interpreted by Atang de la Rama herself. The text of the first section describes the alluring Sesang using the image of a fragrant flower as a metaphor for her irresistible charm. The sensual depiction is very inviting that lures listeners to her loveliness. The second section's sensual imageries become more vivid with Sesang assuming a more active character by extending an invitation to dance with her, cast in the major mode. In this song, the dance is used as a metaphor for sex, specifically alluding to the agency of bailarinas in Manila's dance cabarets in the American period, who epitomize a vision of liberated sexuality defined as the possibility of fulfilling one's desire without restraint, of freely actualizing one's sexual being. According to Schenker, I quote, "Their act of dancing with strange men in close embraces for money prompted a social indignation that portrayed these women in extreme stereotypical ways as masamang babae, or evil or wicked women, who lured Filipino men into disreputable lives of gambling, immorality, and poverty." The text is as follows, as you can see on the screen. By assuming the character of a bailarina in the song, Sesang freely expresses her unrestrained sexuality, which actualizes the quotidian pragmatic performance model of femininity forwarded by Tremelius. In addition, Schenker asserts that bailarinas occupied a distinct position in the new jazz economy of the early 20th century, while at the same time appeared to threaten the attainment of nationhood through enabling performances of imperial whiteness and by troubling Filipino respectability. Nonetheless, her exercise of an emancipated actualization of her sexual potential, fulfilling her natural qualities and desires as a woman and as an individual, generated the form of an alternate modernity for the Filipino woman and can be regarded as a marker of attained equality. Conclusion. In this essay, I have argued that songs from zarzuela productions in Manila in the early 20th century became markers of difference in the constitution of cultural and symbolic borders. Songs highlighting gender narratives of emancipation, particularly of women, from the limitations imposed by colonial ideologies acted as spaces of possibilities in crossing the border of Manila's patriarchal society. Anchoring on the two models of Filipina femininity posited by Tremelius, which are the prescriptive idealized model and performative lived practice model, I have presented how the modernizing image of the Filipina transgressed imposed boundaries that were primarily founded on gender constructions through focusing on the two examples of border-crossing songs from zarzuelas. In both songs, the socially precluded topic of losing virginity and the liberating identity of bailarinas defy the moral stigma as they represent expressions of emancipation, allowing for the assumption of multiple gendered identity, as well as providing new opportunities for working-class women as they participated in the transformation of Philippine society in the early 20th century. Thank you very much.